All right. Tonight is April 21st. We are wrapping up our look at Christ's Great Commission to his church to spread the gospel. Tonight is discussing video number 4, Big Picture Mission Work, and our calling and our individual participation in carrying out the Great Commission. We'll start with prayer. Oh, gracious Father, we thank you for making us laborers in your vineyard, calling us into this work of spreading your gospel in whatever capacity we can. Help us to see different ways we can individually carry out your Great Commission and ways you can use us as your ambassadors to hold up the prophet's hands and spread that gospel throughout the world. Be with us and bless our discussion and grant us wisdom for Jesus' sake. Amen. All right, so we had Pastor, which Udy?
David.
David? Yeah, David Udy. And he's in our Appleton congregation, with Appleton, Wisconsin, just north of Green Bay, or which side of Green? South of Green Bay. Their congregation is one of the newer congregations in the CLC. It's still a mission, I believe. So a unique congregation they have there, and so glad he was able to provide some talking points for our Bible study. So the first section and passage he dealt with, let me just pull it up here on my screen, is 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, and I'll share it. Reading from the ESV, you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So I believe Pastor Udy emphasized the role of a priest is that of praying and mediating. And that's our role in this world. We are sons of the King, and we are his priests. And so we are praying for people. We are serving as mediators. We're also a chosen nation, God's own special people. So the first question for discussion we have here, and feel free to hop in. My hope is that I'm not the only one talking tonight. Question number 1, considering 1 Peter 2:9, we talked about how God's chosen nation, the New Testament, is really his holy Christian church that is all believers. What activities of the Christian are part of this priestly service? I guess I already answered that question.
I also really appreciated his parallels with how our bodies are temples, and I make sure I remember exactly what he said, but how our whole lives are really our priesthood and how we witness with our lives. That was, I thought, a good
Just a minute.
addition to that passage.
Is that it? It's got a line.
Yeah, I think we lose sight of that sometimes. We think of mission work in the Great Commission, and we think of missionary Ullman, or we think of missionary Evanson and somebody going to a foreign land, but we are all part of the church, and we're part of God's people, and we serve in different capacities in everything we do, and that's what number 2 ties into. Anybody else have anything in number 1?
I just put down that it's the support of our earthly church family, and then I had 4 bullets as volunteers, as donors, encouragement to one another, in our prayer life where we ask and thank the Lord for all that he has done for all of us.
Good.
Isn't the office of the keys also part of, so the forgiveness of sins, that
Yeah.
part of the priestly duties?
Yep. And everybody has those keys. We just had that in public school catechism 2 hours ago, talking with the public schoolers about this high privilege and honor you have that Christ has given you these keys to announce the forgiveness of sins, that when somebody comes repenting, you have the authority to unlock heaven to them with those keys. Yeah. Other thoughts on our role as a chosen nation? All right, we'll move on to number 2, kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Butch said. Write down as many of the various vocations you have across members in your congregation. Then think about how each one relates to the big picture work of preaching the gospel. I don't know if you got lost in that question. I had to read it a couple times. So to start with, I just want to go around and see if everybody can come up with one different vocation. And when we think of vocation, we think of a calling God has given you in life. So for me, I have 6 things I wrote down. I'll only tell you one of them because I don't want to steal your thunder. But your calling, obviously I have a calling as a pastor, but I have other callings in life. But I'm interested to see if everyone here tonight can think of one particular calling they have in life.
I have a calling as a mother.
Mother, there. Okay, there's one. So no one else can use the mother card now.
Calling of a grandmother.
Yep. Another one.
Electrician. That's not me.
Well, jeez. It was supposed to be you.
It's supposed to be you, Butch.
Supposed to
I
be
was
you.
going to sign you
Oh.
up for a property job.
Oh, me.
You, sir.
I couldn't come up with one for I put retiree down, frankly, because they are a resource. I don't know if it's a vocation, but I'm trying to make it a vocation.
Butch, I think there is something to that. You had a vocation, in the financial world before this, in your previous life?
I was military primarily. Financial was second.
Okay. But now those vocations have mostly ceased, not altogether, but even in retirement, that is your vocation. That's your station in life where God has placed you right now. So I think that's legitimate.
I'm going to take, this is Patty, I'm going to take mentor.
Okay. A mentor?
I feel, yes, still to my children and grandchildren, but in a little bit different capacity.
Yeah. It changes over the years. That's for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
That's what grandmas do.
Well, they do a lot of things. That's part of it.
This is Ruth Riemann. I'll say my calling right now is a caregiver.
That's a good one.
Yep.
Very
Should we
good.
ask the care receiver how your calling is going? Very well, I'm sure. Yeah. Again, it's interesting how over the years that the calling changes. It's still a vocation God's placed you in, and you serve to the best of your ability, but it changes. Laura, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I have a calling as a Sunday school teacher.
There you go. Okay. And we could go on. I mean, the list I had. Oh, did you have one, Tamar? Sorry.
Oh, I should probably say that my calling is as a wife.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a very important one.
Yes.
Abigail, do you have what's your vocation you're calling in life right now?
A daughter?
A daughter, yeah.
A good one.
But yeah, my list is my vocations as a father, a husband, a neighbor, a citizen, a son, a pastor, hopefully a friend. But I think Butch's list, he mentioned an electrician, which he is not, but having that in the congregation is absolutely a valuable tool for the furtherance of the gospel. When you have a church that needs lights that need to stay on, or wiring for a webcam so you can stream your service. That's just one example of your vocation in carrying out the big picture work of preaching the gospel. Same thing with Patty mentioning as a mentor. And that goes beyond family, and that I mean, well, let's just start there. Mentor to your own family in directing them with the gospel and carrying out the Great Commission that way, even in the little circle of children and grandchildren. Carrying out your calling as a caregiver and letting the love of Christ show forth through you into caring someone who's ill, or a Sunday school teacher, or a wife. All these things we need. I was just reading in Exodus as they're getting ready to build the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant. God talks about all these different people He's given all these different gifts to. None of them are Moses. You know, none of them are standing at the Red Sea with their arms up. None of them are Aaron, who's the high priest. None of them are Joshua, who's the general, the leader. But He's given them all different gifts and abilities. There's craftsmen and goldsmith, people that know how to build things and put things together, people who have artistic eyes. And all these different gifts all play together for the furtherance of the gospel ministry. They play together in various capacities.
Getting to the paragraph 2 where it says various vocations you have across members in our congregation. Musicians, for example, we have at Berea a great gift, many gifts for musicians that we have at our congregation. It's really quite amazing. Patty and I have been in at least 4 other congregations, and while they've had good musicians, it was always kind of a struggle to come up with someone a lot of times. When Berea, we were blessed to have so many qualified and very talented musicians. It's almost a bonus for what we have there. And then we do have within the group a lot of health professionals. And I'm sure, fortunately at this point, haven't had to need their services, but I've never found people at Berea that weren't cordial and helpful on any topic.
Yeah, I just was talking with my sister-in-law yesterday, and she sharing something about Berea, and she had been here when she was going to college, and she talked about how much she was thankful for her time at the Berea and the people she got to meet here. So yeah, we have our weaknesses, and we certainly need to work on those, but also a lot of blessings in the vocations we have and the gifts God's given our congregation. Yeah. I think about people who have interest in numbers just boggle my mind. Like I think of Jim Sandine, who, retires, and then what does he do? He goes on to be the financial guy for the CLC. And I'm thinking, why would you want to retire and do that? But that's me. Numbers are not my thing. I would much rather pay someone to do my taxes than to me have stomach ulcers trying to figure out my taxes. But there's some people that just love that. Pastor Mike Rail loves going over clergy taxes, and he loves sharing things he's learned about clergy taxes on our email. And that just boggles my mind. But that just goes to show you God's given different gifts to everybody for specific reasons, not to focus. He doesn't want us focusing on the gifts of other people. He wants us to use the gifts he's given us and find ways to put that to work for the furtherance of the preaching of the gospel. I mean, you think of what Laura said about teaching Sunday school and sharing Christ with the little ones in our flock. It can be that, it can be the electrician, it can be the nurse who's telling the pastor, you better slow down or you're going to have health problems later on in life. So whatever it is, the calling God has given us, finding ways to put those things to work for the sake of preaching the gospel and furthering it. All right, we'll move on to the Philippians passage. I said this was only going to be 15 minutes, right? 15 minutes is up. All right. Philippians 1, 3-6. I will share that on my screen here. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you all making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the end, at the day of Jesus Christ. I think the focus of this passage was the partnership in the gospel, the first day until now. The Philippians themselves weren't physically going with Paul on his missionary journeys, but they were finding ways to partner in the gospel with him and to support Paul in his gospel work. So question 3, Paul was overjoyed about the fellowship in the gospel he had with the Philippians through their faith, love, offerings, and prayer. How can we in our congregations encourage generous giving to support the work of preaching the gospel around the world? Let's take up that first question first. How can we encourage generous giving to support the work of preaching the gospel around the world? Just tell people to do it?
I think you have to show a need. Therein lies the secret, obviously. How does one do that? But generally, if people see a need, a genuine need, as opposed to a promotion or whatever. But if you could, especially with volunteerism, if you can show a need, especially with our group or congregations, they see the need, they respond.
Yeah.
So the prayer would be to the good Lord is to help us be able to present the need of whatever it is we're talking about, whether it's foreign missionaries, local missions, for food, clothing, home, property maintenance, support of pastors, teachers, school, whatever it would be. If we show the need, by and large, our people have responded.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing sometimes when a need shows itself. It's almost like the church is waiting for someone to point them in the right direction. That, all they're looking for is a need, and once that need comes up, they show it pretty quickly, and they step up. Annette, you were unmuted there for a minute. Did you have something?
Am I still muted?
You're good, Butch. You're
I
fine.
probably should be. Okay.
Well, yeah, you should be, but that's a different matter. Annette.
No, that's what I was gonna say along those lines. It's about explaining what work is going on and where needs are. I think that really encourages Christians to follow. That's all. So pretty much what Butch said.
You agree with Butch? Okay.
That's dangerous.
Well, we want you to feel.
Come on, Annette, you can do better than that.
One of the thoughts I had was, we get these prayer lists. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look over them, mission prayer lists last week, and it's almost overwhelming. And when you hear mission reports, you get reports of everywhere, and it's almost overwhelming. What might be helpful is, instead of all of them all at once, each month maybe focusing on a mission congregation, learning more about that mission group, and learning a little bit more about that. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll move on to this. Oh, go ahead.
I think sometimes some needs go undetected. For example, I noted that support of students. I'm talking about our students in our Berea school. I'm talking about students, ILC, college and high school departments. Things such as showing interest in their activities. For example, whether it's athletics or arts or other things, robotics or whatever they do, I think students appreciate a genuine interest when members of their congregation, or a lot of times parents, grandparents, whatever, show an interest in what they're doing. That's pretty cost-free, not cost-free, but pretty easy to do, just to show an interest. But I think it helps students as they move on in life and do what they're doing as a student to know that people care. And you can get into a lot of things. I appreciated the comment that was made about being a caregiver. Down here, we see a lot of that. It's amazing, and just how good some of them are. It's amazing. But it's a gift of God, frankly, that people can do that.
Yeah, I talked to a podiatrist, or what's the foot doctor? Yeah. I asked, I had an ingrown toenail. I don't want to get into details, but I had an ingrown toenail, and she's taking care of it for me. And I said, why on earth are you doing this? Why did you pick this as a profession? Out of all the professions out there, why would you pick dealing with people's bunions and ingrown toenails and all sorts of gross feet things? Because I can't stand, feet kind of gross me out. Anyway, she said, well, your feet are pretty important. If your feet don't work right, it's really hard to get around. So if I can help people with their feet, that's going to help them with their mobility and help them in their overall health. And I thought, well, there you go. Just those little things that you don't think about again. What are some specific, back to question 3, what are some specific needs and funds that anybody's aware of in support of the preaching of the gospel around the world that you're aware of? I think with our mission board, there's always needs. They never have a surplus. They make use of everything they have. One of the things I wanted to share with this one, maybe you remember these ladies from our Christmas Eve program that introduced themselves and would say, "We love you." So they're from Uganda. They're from our sister church body in Uganda, and they are in pretty dire need right now, basically because of COVID and government restrictions and everything going on. They are just barely scraping by with the orphanage Pastor Daniel is running there. So right now, the congregation in Mapleton, Gift of God, is kind of overseeing a collection of funds to help support our church body in Uganda that we're in fellowship with. Now, the Board of Missions, you know, they're overseeing all of the missions, and they know all of these congregations have needs and need help. But this was one specific need that came up. I know one of our member families is sending checks to Gift of God in Mapleton to help make sure that the group there is being taken care of. So, I mean, there's an example of a situation God has made known that here our brothers and sisters are in need, and that moved somebody to support that. Anything else on number 3? Otherwise, we'll move on to number 4 because our 15 minutes is up, our 20 minutes is up. We're getting close to a half hour here, which is fine. I'm glad to have this conversation. Number 4, what are some other ways we as individual Christians and congregations as a synod can hold up the missionaries' hands? So Pastor Udi gave that example from the Old Testament of Moses. When Moses's arms were up, the Israelites would win, but his arms would get tired and the enemy army would win. So who was it? Aaron and Joshua? No, Joshua was fighting Aaron and Caleb.
I think you only mentioned Aaron, but I think it was another.
There's 2 of them.
Yeah.
Anybody gonna help me with my Bible trivia here? But they were, that's where the mission hymn, holding up the prophet's hands. How can we hold up our missionaries' hands? Help support them.
Prayer.
Yep. Pray for missionary Evenson and missionary Ullman. Aaron and her. I had to go.
Well, obviously, financial support, donations of time, other resources such as in-kind items as food, clothing, fuel, transportation, vehicles have been known to be gifted at other times. Almost unlimited number of different supply items are always in need, especially with our foreign missions.
I think of the value of a laptop. I think well, I don't know how many techie people you have in your home, but we have 2 laptops, a desktop computer, cell phones, a tablet, 2 tablets, you know, and they would highly value one in order to help with their mission work or to give to a student who's in the training program or a pastor who's out in the foreign fields so he can report back. So yeah, things like that to help hold up the prophet's hands in the work they do. Encouragement, prayer, all those things. We'll move on to the Ephesians passage unless somebody else had something to share on that number 4. This section deals with the unity aspect of our work. Share Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 to 6. I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of love. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belongs to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So the big question is, unity is clearly very important to our mission work, and what is that unity to be based on?
Jesus.
Jesus, okay. The word, you think of Christ's Great Commission to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. So everything Jesus has given us in his word, that's our mission. That's our calling, is to share the whole counsel of God as we build on faith in Jesus. So it's not unity based on a name. We don't base it on the name Lutheran. If we base it on the word, then we'll get back to Lutheranism. But it's got to be the word to start with, and that's got to be the focus. Number 2 is a focus on doctrine or teaching ever detrimental to mission work.
No.
I heard a no, so I'll go with that. No, it's not detrimental. But the follow-up question is interesting. What are some dangers that could be a distraction to both good doctrine and zeal for souls? What are some dangers that could be a distraction to both good doctrine and a zeal for souls? A harder question. I can, unless someone wants to stick their neck out first, I'll do it. With this one, and what it made me think of is when I have an adult instruction class and something comes up in the adult instruction class, and I am dreading having to address that at some point. I'm even afraid to address it because I think if I talk about it, they're never going to come back. We're never going to see them again. So the temptation is to ignore it rather than addressing it for fear of driving people away. But that's not fulfilling the Great Commission then, because I'm not teaching them everything that Christ has called me to do. And it's interesting when it's addressed in love, and it is brought up and it is brought out, and we do talk about it, the number of times I kick myself because God does exactly what he says he's going to do. He says, preach the word, and he'll take care of the rest. And he does. And it blows me away, but it shouldn't every time. It shouldn't surprise us that when you preach God's word, the sheep of the good shepherd are going to respond to the voice of the good shepherd when they hear it. When he's correcting them with his word, when he's leading them with his word, and so on.
I think you hit on that point, though. I mean, focus on doctrine when it's not done in love can also be detrimental to mission work. He wants us to speak the truth in love.
Yeah.
And so remembering how much God values the Christian that you're sharing with, and keeping that in mind when you're witnessing is important as well.
Yeah. Finding a way to express it in love.
The dangers that could be distractions, as is stated here in 2, and this is just simply with any group dynamics, and churches aren't immune to this, but pride, selfishness, self-serving, egos, those the devil's tools, if you will. And because we're all sinful human beings, from time to time, on certain circumstances, they can creep into a group, whether it's Berea congregation, another congregation. But again, as has been mentioned here, if we can get back to the fact that what we need and pray for is Christian unity and love, I'd say in every case that will overcome those other devilish items, if you will, such as pride, ego, selfish, self-serving, whatever. They can be overcome with that.
What's that? There's a phrase, your actions are so loud I can't hear what you're saying, or something like that. Is that a familiar term to anybody?
Yeah, actions are louder than words.
Actions
Yeah,
speak louder than words.
Oh, there's
Always.
something else. There's something that
I heard that too. I heard that you said.
yeah, your actions are so loud I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
That what the
Yeah.
person is doing is so lack of a better word, demonstrative. It's just out there and it's in your face
Right.
that, you know, somebody may be coming at you with the gospel, and it's a pure gospel, but because of how the lack of love, as Annette was saying, that they have in presenting it, it almost overshadows the message you're bringing.
Right.
And the amazing thing is, God uses us in our weaknesses. So even if we are weak in our delivery, we are weak in our attitude, we're sinful in our presentation, even, which is, you don't want to think of that even being the case, but that's our sinful weakness. God can still use the seed that's being sown to work in the heart of an individual. I guess I read that question. I think I read it in a different way than they intended it. It's probably meant to be, what are some distractions that could be a danger to both good doctrine and a zeal for souls? I think that was in the video, that was the focus, was the distraction, not the dangers. So I read that wrong. I think Butch got it. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? So again, the wrap up is the value of the individual in every capacity for the spread of the gospel, for unity, in whether you're holding up the prophet's hands, whether you're praying, encouragement, the electrician, whatever it is. Finding ways to put those gifts to work for the furtherance of the gospel and building up the church. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, we got one more of these. We'll plan on this next Wednesday again at 7:30. I will do what I did this week. We'll send out the video link Tuesday afternoon. This last one wraps everything up. It's about a 45-minute video. Back with Pastor Tiefel out in Seattle area. So watch that ahead of time with your handout and fill in the handout, and we'll get together next Wednesday at 7:30, Lord willing, and wrap up our study and our discussion here. And then just so everybody knows the plan for Bible classes on Sundays, Drew Nauman will have Bible class this Sunday, and then in May, we'll be getting ready for convention. So May 2nd, Steve Ludvigson will be giving a presentation on Board of Regents stuff. So that's Emmanuel. 9th and the 16th, Dave Schoenbeck will be giving a presentation on Board of Doctrine stuff, including the joint statement. That's been our radar for a while. And then on the 23rd and the 30th, I'll wrap things up to get us ready for convention. Our delegates this year are Nick Gamble and Jamie Arndt. So you'll have a chance to look at what's coming up at convention the beginning of May. And if you have any thoughts or insights about items coming up at convention, I'd encourage you to find a way to share those thoughts with Jamie and Nick as our representatives at convention. So, all right. Everybody have a good night, and Lord be with you all.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.